What is up, everybody? Welcome into the brand new Buffalo Bills on NY Up YouTube page, home of the Shout Buffalo Football podcast covering your Bills. We're so glad that you're here. We're excited for what's to come, but we've got a little ask here for you.
Yeah, Bills Mafia. Pretend it's a table and go smash that like and subscribe button on this page.
For Ryan, I am Matt. Enjoy this video.
You know, one of the biggest storylines going to this week has been Josh Allen versus Lamar Jackson, but they're not playing against each other. It's going to be Josh Allen versus Wink Martindale's defense. And last year, Martindale drew up a great game plan, and we were just talking about it. 31 blitzes, 12 quarterback hits, 6 sacks. Fast forward 1 year, Josh Allen has been brilliant against the blitz. So in this chess matchup, so to speak, if Josh Allen starts making some plays against this Wink Martindale defense, does Martindale maybe call off the blitzes and adjust on the fly? Or do you see him continuing to bring that pressure and trying to go with what's brought them to the dance, so to speak?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's going to be fascinating to see how the game, unfolds and the adjustments both sides make. They will not reel back on the blitz to the extent, that most teams, they're not going to be, like some of these teams that don't like to blitz and only pull it out every now and then. That's not going to be the case. But will he use it less than he did last year? I assume so. I assume that's part of the game plan, just because Allen's been so good and those receivers are so good in one-on-one circumstances. So, yeah, I think he'd use the blitz a little less, but it's not – he's still going to come, and he's still going to be creative with it. The Ravens really pride themselves on they designed a defense where players can on the fly see something and blitz, and they'll have a lot of, things that they can do based on what they see the Bills doing. They're not gonna sit back and let the Bills bring it to them. But that said, I mean, you're absolutely right. Just looking at Josh Allen's numbers against the blitz and seeing him play every week, you can't bring rushers at him every time because he's going to pick you apart. The fascinating matchup to me is the Bills obviously have one of the best receiving cores in the NFL, but the Ravens, if Marcus Peters is healthy, he's missed 2 days of practice, but the Ravens have 3 really good corners in Marcus Peters, Marlon Humphrey, Jimmy Smith. If you blitz and you're leaving those guys one-on-one, you're going to have a Stephon Diggs versus a Marcus Peters or a Cole Beasley versus a Marlon Humphrey. Those matchups are going to be really, really key. It's going to be really fascinating to watch one of the best secondaries and one of the best receiving cores go at it, because that's just as important. If you blitz Josh Allen and you cover well, you can have success. If you blitz Josh Allen and you don't cover well, he's really going to pick you apart.
One of the things, and I want to ask you about Patrick Queen, and Ryan, remind me if I forget, because I want to get into him a little bit. But while we're here on the corners, I want to ask you about a matchup strategy question, because I feel like when the Bills were going well in the first part of the season, and that's really only September, was when we got to see their full complement, fully healthy together at the same time with John Brown, Cole Beasley, Gabe Davis, Isaiah McKenzie, Stephon Diggs. That's going to ideally be the case this weekend, and with Cole Beasley healthier. And so I'm thinking that maybe their best weapon against that kind of blitzing mentality is to go 4 wide and maybe, go 10 personnel and try to stretch out and kind of test their depth at the corner position. What kind of lives after those top 3 names in terms of what they're able to do coverage wise?
It's interesting you mentioned that, because several teams have had success being able to do that against the Ravens. The Steelers are a good example. The first time the Ravens and Steelers played, the Steelers did not move the ball well at all in the first half. In the second half, they just scrapped everything and just went 4 wide and got into some of that cornerback depth and moved the ball well against the Ravens and ended up beating them. I agree with you. I think that's a way that Brian Daboll and that group can attack the Ravens. After Jimmy Smith, Marcus Peters, and Marlon Humphrey, Anthony Averett is the number 4 corner he was a 4th-round pick in 2018, excuse me. He's got some experience. He's a pretty good player. He's a really quick guy, but he's not necessarily strong, not a great tackler, not great in the slot. So he's a guy who maybe would be a good matchup for John Brown, but if the Bills draw that matchup right, they could pick on Anthony Averett. And then after that, 37-year-old Tramon Williams, who they picked up midseason, is probably the number 5 corner. Great veteran. I'm impressed that he's been able to contribute. But I think if the Bills are able to spread the field and attack a guy like Tramon Williams, especially if injuries hit, Like I said, Marcus Peters, has the Ravens cornerback, has missed a couple practices. Jimmy Smith has been banged up all year. If you're forcing Tramon Williams onto the field and you can attack him in coverage, I think that's something you can do. Some teams have had success using tight ends and stuff like that against the Ravens to get a guy like a Patrick Queen in coverage. But the Bills, their strength is their receiving core, so why not try and test the Ravens cornerbacks? And if you can get beyond that top 3, then they're a little more susceptible.
Take me back to training camp real quick before we move to Queen. 2018, John Brown's lone year. How much did he go up against Jimmy Smith, if you can remember, in practice? And what were those battles like, if you do remember, if they even matched up against each other?
They did a little bit. I actually think he was a little bit more matched up with Marlon Humphrey at that point.
Okay.
Because Humphrey's played a lot in the slot this year, but Tavon Young has been their slot guy, and he was healthy, at least at the beginning of training camp. But yeah, both against Humphrey and Smith, there's a couple times he really burned Humphrey, and Humphrey was only in his second year at that point. And that was impressive. Back then, Joe Flacco was the Ravens quarterback, and he's got a really big arm. Certainly not the same player that Josh Allen is, but probably similar in terms of being able to release the deep balls. And he really burned both Humphrey and Jimmy Smith on some deep balls. And I'm excited to watch him because I really like John Brown, both getting to know him in the locker room, but also he's a fun player to watch. And hopefully he's healthy, and that'll be a really good matchup to watch on the edge there.
I remember you talking about that. That's why I remember you writing about that. When I was talking to you about John Brown as an off-season target, I remember you writing about the training camp that he had, and it got me thinking that some of those matchups would have been funny. But moving on to Mr. Queen.
That'll be fun.